April 26th. Thank you. Yes, definitely want to record. Thank you. And this is the Imagine Girdwood meeting. Today, we aren't going to have much business, actually any business. We have Holly from Huddle and I think a couple people at least from the municipality of Anchorage who are going to give us a little presentation. So just to see who all's out there and say hi, we're going to do some introductions, then jump right in. So Holly, if you want to, I'm Amanda Sassy. I'll start. I'm the chair of Imagine Girdwood. Thank you.
Okay, planning team, I'll wait for the end for us. I'm going to start with the Girdwood community members first. Okay, I'm going to start with Shannon O'Brien. Go ahead, Shannon.
Oh, thank you. Hi, I'm Shannon O'Brien. I'm a community member.
And we'll go to Marco next.
Marco Zaccaro, community member.
Brian Burnett.
Good evening, Brian Burnett, Girdwood community member.
Okay, we'll go to Carolyn next.
Hi. Yep, Carolyn and Ralph Brodeen here, community members. Thanks.
Deb.
Yep. Hi, Deb Essex, community member.
Ed.
That's Ed Russell and Anna. We're community members.
Welcome. We'll go to Aaron next.
Hi, Erin Eaker, Treasurer, Imagine Girdwood.
Thanks, Aaron. Heather.
This is Mike speaking for Heather, community member.
Hi, Mike. Jerry.
Jerry and Carol Fox, community members.
Go ahead, Crystal.
Hi, Crystal Hoke, community member.
Lynn. Okay, we'll go to Mitch.
That might be me, and my name's Lene. And
oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Lene and Patrick Doran, community members.
I see the accent now. Or okay. We'll go to Mitch, please.
Hi, I'm Mitch Roth. I'm a director at large of Girdwood, Imagine Girdwood.
Okay. Paul.
Paul Cruz, community member, and Barbara is here also. She'll be back in a minute.
Okay. So then the person who is the person calling in on the phone, if you would like to introduce yourself.
This is Brianna Sullivan. Thank you.
Right. Hi, Brianna. Okay. And then Catherine, you just joined us. Would you like to introduce yourself, please? We'll give you a minute. You like literally just logged on. Okay. Now I'm going to introduce, we're lucky to have two members of the planning staff here with us this evening. So Christine, I'll let you introduce yourself first. Go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Holly. Christine Bonnell. I'm with the municipality of Anchorage in the long range planning department, part of the long range team.
And then Daniel, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. This is Daniel McKenna Foster. I'm a long-range planner in the planning department. Girdwood is my area, so you can see me in maybe some other meetings too, talking about this stuff. Thanks.
Okay, so now I'm going to share my screen. It's going to take me just a little, it's going to take me a second. Hold on. Where am I going to do it? Okay. Thanks for bearing with me. Sometimes I don't know. I'm not going to explain myself. I'm just going to make you bear with me in this awkward silence. Okay. There we go. You got it? Okay. So Daniel and I are going to be the main presenters tonight. The topic tonight is going to be land use. Okay. So it's going to be important. We thought about, okay, remember that updating the Girdwood Area Plan or the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan, one of the primary functions of your Girdwood Comprehensive Plan is a land use plan map. So we're not going to be doing a lot of actual land use planning tonight or strategic thinking around your future land use plan map. What we're going to be doing tonight is kind of laying the framework for talking about what land use is, why it's important, and talking about the differences between land use and zoning, so that when we get together again in 2 weeks in person at your community room, that you have a very strong base of what this is to be able to think about future land use in your community. So that's the goal for tonight. And that's why we have Daniel and Christine here. They are going to provide a lot of the technical aspects of land use. What is it? And zoning. What is that? And what are the differences? And how does that relate to the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan? Okay. So we're going to talk about, some of you may have heard me talk about some of this stuff before, like what is the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan, or what you call the Girdwood Area Plan? What is it? Why is it important? We're going to talk about what this whole process has actually accomplished to date. Again, what is land use? What is zoning? And then I'm going to go through a refresher of the vision, goals, and policy document that you've worked so hard on and adopted, I think, about 18 months ago now. Because, and I'll say this again, but I'm going to say it now. The intent is to take your vision, goals, and policies and use your land use plan map to start implementing those. Okay. So that's the goal for tonight. Well, multiple goals. Okay, so what is the Girdwood Area Plan? The Girdwood Area Plan ideally is updated every 15 to 20 years. So we're kind of getting a little bit long for this, which is a good reason, it's good that you're updating this now, right? So the Girdwood Area Plan sets vision, goals, and policies for what you all see as the goals for how to manage growth in your community, okay? What do you want the quality of life in your community look like? What do you want your community, how do you want to manage that into the future as a place? So it also sets goals and policies for what does the transportation system look like? Do you have the infrastructure that you need in order to implement these visions and goals? So it's an overarching document that sets the framework for you to plan and manage growth into the future, okay? So then out of this starts to come some implementation tools, which are many. It's a variety of tools based on what your vision is, right? And a land use plan map is one of those primary things that is the outcome of this plan, which we'll get to in more detail. Okay, so a comprehensive plan, the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan or the Girdwood Area Plan, you'll hear people call it multiple things. I want to talk about how it fits into the framework of all the documents that you have for your community, because it's not just like, you know, a million plans that are all equal, right? There's like a hierarchy of plans that provide different levels of guidance. Okay, so we're going to start kind of on the top, and the overarching is the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan. Okay, it's your land use plan. It gives overall policy direction. It sets overall vision and goals for how you all agree on the future of your community. Okay, so that's the overarching planning document. So underneath that, you'll start to think about or see different plans. So the Girdwood Trails plan is what you call a functional plan. Sometimes you'll hear people call it an element of your comprehensive plan. But the Girdwood Trails plan is a functional plan that provides more specific direction than just like hierarching vision, goals, and policies. Like the Trails plan will provide more specific direction for certain resources or infrastructure in your community. So streets, trails, wetlands, parks, those are what you call functional plans. There's also more specific plans that are area specific plans. And here they provide more detail for whether it's a neighborhood within your community or a district within your community or a corridor within your community. Those are area specific plans. And the Girdwood South Townsite Area Master Plan is an example of an area specific plan. Again, another element of your comprehensive plan. Okay, I'm just going to check the waiting room. Okay, we're good. Okay, comprehensive plan elements. Next. Oops. Hello. There we go. Then there are more specific plans that are what we call implementation plans or implementation actions. The first thing we'll talk about is Title 21, Chapter 9. And that is the Girdwood section of Title 21. And what that, it has development guidelines, zoning, it defines uses. So Title 21 is how you start implementing these larger, more policy directed plans. Okay, so these are again the implementation actions. Another example of implementation actions would be specific capital improvements like road upgrades in neighborhoods or actual park upgrades, what you have capital money to actually do the projects. Okay, those are more specific plans. So I know I spent a lot of time on that. I just want people to remember that the Girdwood Area Plan is your overarching policy document, and all of these other plans are actually well thought about in a hierarchy of plans to get things done in your community. So it's really important to have this framework of plans that are updated to guide how your community changes. Okay.
Holly,
So-
do you see you have a hand up?
No, I don't because
It looks like Bernski has a question. Is now a good time? Just so you don't get off topic?
Yeah, I don't want to get bogged down. However, go ahead and ask. I don't want to get into discussion, but I'll answer questions. How does that sound?
Thanks, Holly. Just real quick, where do plans like the Alyeska master plan from 2009 and a new master plan that Alyeska would be coming up, those go into the bottom of that kind of hierarchy as far as private corporations?
Yeah, I would say that there are certain times where the planning department will require like a private organization to go through some more detailed master planning or area planning for their site. Now, I don't actually know if the municipality requires Alyeska to have an area plan, but they, or excuse me, a master plan, do they?
Holly, I can answer that. They do require them to have one.
Yeah, and it's because, and it's the same for like the Alaska Native Medical Center, that site, universities are required to have master plans, because if you think about it, a resort or a big medical facility campus or a academic campus, there's big infrastructure there, and they have like a lot of needs for utilities and roads and people coming in and out from a transportation perspective, and there could be like recreation going through. So a lot of times a government agency will require an organization like that to have a more specific, to have a master plan so that you know how it impacts development around you. And you can plan for that. And then, you know, there's bigger utility and power draws. So where that would lie to me would be, it's probably here in area specific master plan. I don't think though that it would be classified as a comprehensive plan element. You can think of it like an area specific plan, but I don't think it would be an element of the comprehensive plan. That's where it gets a little funky because of it's like a, you know, a private development. But so there are things that fall like kind of outside the boundaries of this specific example, but yeah, that's a good question. But it's good to think about, and I'm happy you brought it up, Brian, because like I said, developments like a resort or a university do have larger impacts on a community, traffic, utilities, resources. So anyway.
Workforce.
Yeah, thank you. Workforce, housing, all that.
I think Daniel was gonna make a comment. I don't know if he still wanted to.
Go ahead, Daniel. Sorry.
No, I didn't have any. I was just unmuting to see if there was a quick, but I don't have anything.
Okay, cool.
All right. Okay. Oh, blah, sorry. Here we go again. Okay. What has been accomplished to date? This is more, so the people who are on the Imagine Girdwood committee, you obviously know this. The people who are kind of entering the process now, just want to bring everybody up to speed so that you remember that we've actually been working on this for a while, so you know what we've done. 2019, woo, there was a Girdwood community survey. Every person in the community of Girdwood was mailed, every property owner was mailed a survey. In addition, you know, people who don't own property, there was, you know, we posted it in the post office, so everybody had the opportunity to fill out the community survey. The results of that community survey led to an open house in April of 2019, where we kind of reviewed what we heard and then asked the 100 people in the room what they thought. And we took all that information and we started drafting the vision, goals, and policies. That are in draft form now, but have been approved by the committee to move forward. You know, they're not going to be final until the final Girdwood comprehensive plan is passed. But we have a working set of vision, goals, and policies that we're going to be working to figure out how to implement. We're going to go through those later. Okay, those were approved in March of 2021. Excuse me. And then last summer, we started doing the groundwork for an existing conditions analysis. Many times, well, all the time, comprehensive plans include kind of an analysis of what's happening now. What are the existing conditions to date? So we did a land suitability analysis. So what is the status of your land right now? What's the housing status? What is the housing demand? And we've finished that last summer. You all should be most familiar with that. And I'm going to show you where to get all these resources at the end so that you can look at that. It's important to take a current snapshot of existing demographics, what the housing analysis is looking like, how much land is developed, what is undeveloped. So that as we start making, as we start getting into implementation, we're really doing it understanding what the existing conditions look like now. Okay. So then moving on, this is where we are here today, plan development and approval. You'll see that there's lots of pieces of the plan that have already happened, like the vision, goals, and policies, the existing conditions and land suitability. You'll start to see these items being chapters of your plan. But what we're doing now is we're starting to work on land use and then the implementation actions for that. So the goal is, I mean, we're working toward having a plan done by the end of this year. That's, we're a little bit behind schedule based on a couple of little things that happened here, but we're still close to being able to having a plan moving through the approval process at the end of this year. And then ideally you review and evaluate this thing every 10 years, and hopefully you don't have to do a complete overhaul. You can just do targeted updates every 10 years instead of a complete overhaul. It's a little bit easier to do if you change the oil in your car, you don't have to get a new car. I feel like my dad, he would have said that. Okay. Okay. So now I'm going to stop yammering on. You're going to get to listen to Daniel talk. Daniel's going to take you through some of the overarching concepts and technical discussions about land use and zoning. And Daniel, if you just give me a nod, I will move the slides for you.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Holly. Thanks everybody. Thanks for having us. I know this seems kind of boring and esoteric, and it all is kind of weird how it fits together, but I promise you, as you go through this process, you'll probably never forget it again. I think it's just sort of one of those things you kind of get used to, and then you know it. So at the very basic, land use is just like what's the activity, right? You could think of it like maybe you get a big piece of property and you think, what do I want to do on different parts of this property? One place I want to have my garden, one place I want to have my house, one place I want to have my sitting area, and you just kind of categorize it into different types of activities. Land use plan map is pretty much the same thing, but at a city scale. In any city, any town, you have some places that are better for housing, some places that are better for industry, some places that are great for recreation. And the land use plan map is really just sort of categorizing that, putting on the map and saying, this is where in the future we want to be doing this is where we want to be doing this, and this is the area maybe where we don't want to be doing this or something like that. So just think of it as categories. Yeah, perfect. So right now, the kind of land use plan map envisioned in the 90s for what Girdwood would be is here. And let's see, I think I might actually have a digital version of this as well. I'll put that in the chat so you can see that. We digitized it. It's this paper version is the definitive version, but we created a digital one to look at as well. So as you can see, in 1995, they planned out for the community. They're saying, okay, in the future, this is kind of where we want these types of activities. And you'll see down in the key, the types of activities are broken down to single family housing, multifamily housing, commercial, residential, commercial, industrial, transportation, et cetera. And it kind of makes sense, right? The airport is classified as a transportation area. So it's really kind of broad, general, and stuff like commercial recreation or resort, thinking about in the future, this is the kind of stuff we want to happen here. And a lot of times these designations will apply to areas where there isn't anything yet, because you're thinking in the future there will be stuff and we would like it to go there. So this is what we're looking at today, and this is what the task to update is, because this is just a fundamental piece of any plan. So that when people look at it, they say, okay, which way is Girdwood moving? Where are things going to be? Because it provides some certainty for people who want to build something, people who want to change something, people want to invest something, for utilities who want to put in infrastructure or not put in infrastructure, for larger stakeholders like the state. If the state wants to do something, we'll say, well, where's this community looking? Where are they moving? And they can look at this plan. Next, please, Holly. So as I mentioned, land use category definitions, these are the definitions of those activities, right? And these are the ones that are pulled directly from that map we just saw. And this is all in the 1995 plan. And it just sort of talks about what kind of activities are supposed to happen here. So for example, the single family residential designation, which you saw was the yellow part on the map, says this classification is for areas substantially developed for single family residential purposes and are expected to remain so for the duration of the plan. Let's see, commercial, this classification for areas substantially developed for commercial purposes and are expected to remain so for the duration of the plan. So it's these kind of general broad categories. Another thing, in some places might call them classifications, some places might call them designations. I think in the Anchorage Bowl 2040 plan, they're called land use designations, but a land use designation, a land use classification is the exact same thing. And that's something to maybe talk about is, as this moves forward, maybe you call them designations instead of classifications, just so they're the same as the 2040 plans. When people are looking at it, there's less confusion. Next, please, Holly. Oh,
I just want to jump in and say the intent for your knowledge intake tonight is for you not to have to read all these right now. This is going to be one of your homework assignments. Okay. So we just kind of wanted you to get an idea of it. You'll get a resource to where you can find these later.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So this is a zoom in of that land use map we looked at. And now it's taking those designations, those classifications we just looked at, and it's just showing them a little bit more specifically. So you can see on the map, and on here you can even see the parcel layers. So these areas apply to a bunch of different properties. And it's sort of this, again, this sort of broad, generalized types of activity in that area. For example, public lands and institutions, that's the blue. That's almost always blue in any land use map and usually in zoning map. That's usually a place where people say, okay, we want to have a school here in the future. Or maybe they say, oh, this is where our water treatment plant is. Or in this case, I think, maybe you have the dump, or it is, I forget what's there. Is it the Fish and Game, or maybe highways or something next to the railroad there. But so it's just thinking about in the future, maybe the school's here now. We want it to stay there in the future. So we're going to keep this designated as that designation or that classification. Next, please, Holly. So what is zoning? At the last meeting a couple of weeks ago, we were kind of talking about land use and also talking about zoning. And so the two are different. Next, please, Holly. So zoning, as Holly kind of talked about, is what implements the plan. So it's the level below that. So if you look at Girdwood zoning right now, there's a lot more designations, or a lot more zoning districts than there are designations. And these are the actual kind of regulations that implement those generalized categories. So if you said commercial, we want this to be an area that's generally commercial activity. And if you look down by the highway, there's GC1, GC2, and GC3. So those are all different types of commercial, but they all sit within that commercial category. And you have the same for residential, you have the same for kind of open space, and you have different types of zones. And you'll see that in the Girdwood Code, which is chapter 9, and it's sort of categorized. It says, these are our residential zones, these are our commercial zones, these are our open space, or these are our civic zones. So again, just think of it as land use on the top and then zoning on the bottom. And next, please, Holly. So here's kind of looking at it a different way. Again, the land use plan map is at the very top. That's the big conceptual, what's going on in this area. Is it a commercial area? Is it a mixed use area? Is it a civic area? Maybe an open space area? The level below that is the specific rules that apply to that area. So it's a commercial area. Okay, what types of commercial? What should the buildings look like? What should the dimensions look like? What should the lots look like? And that's what the zoning does. And then below that is what's actually happening on the land. So usually, ideally, all these three layers align, right? But things change; they don't always align. And so you might see something where you say, "Wait a second, there's an old store in that area that's supposed to be an industrial area, and it's from an old time, but and it might change over time." But so it's helpful to think of these layers. Land use plan map, which is what we're working at today, is the big general categories of types of activities. Zoning is the rules that implement that and sort of provide the specifics of those activities. And then existing development and land use is what's actually going on the ground, what people can actually do there. Next, please, Holly. So again, as I mentioned, here's the Girdwood zoning. Think of it as on the left, the district types. That's really kind of the land use classification, the land use designation. You have your residential districts, you have a bunch there, commercial districts, industrial districts, resort use districts, and other districts, right? So you could make a comprehensive plan map or a land use plan map just off those district types. And maybe that's the way to think about it. As you put this map together, think, should this be an area of residential districts? Should it be an area of commercial districts? Should it be an area of mixed use districts? That's the other thing too, is that with comprehensive plan maps, you don't have to be stuck in the existing designations, the existing classifications. You can reduce, you can increase. So these are sort of the guidelines. In most cases, most comprehensive plan use maps have generally similar types of categories. But again, there are always special cases. And so it's something where there is some leeway and it's a community plan, right? So the community can kind of think about those things. Next, please, Holly. So again, think land use plan map, zoning, and now we're looking into the zoning, what's actually allowed. So again, on the far left, you see the use category. Let's think about that as the land use plan map. And then the use type, and that gets into the zoning. So the second layer is going to be the specifics of what you can do there, what is allowed, what the dimensions are, and all the kind of specifics of when you actually want to put hammer and nails together to build something, what you can do and what you can't do. And so this is an excerpt from the Girdwood Code, and it talks about the types of uses that are allowed within those categories. And then the kind of row along the top is the zones where those uses are allowed. So this is just an example. It's the existing. We're not really going to get into this today because we're trying to get to the general categories, higher level. What kind of stuff is happening there? Residential, commercial, mixed use, something else, industrial, etc. Next, please, Holly. So a big role of the land use plan map is when people are making investments or people are trying to build or trying to change something, is they have to go through the process to figure out, well, is what I'm doing in line with what the community planned to do or what the community wanted for this area? So that's the process of, does this action implement the plan? And in planning, we always want the actions to implement the plan because the plan is supposed to represent the values of the community looking forward. And it provides that sort of policy guidance for making those decisions. In our office, in the planning department, if somebody wants to do a rezone or do a big project, we usually have a meeting with the project owner or whoever's doing it. And the first thing we do is we look to the plan and we say, well, what does the plan say? Does what they want to do align with what was planned for this area, this space, this district, whatever? So this is just sort of a breakdown of how it currently works. And if somebody looks on the map and they say, oh, okay, I can see I have, let's start with commercial. The area my land is in is all red, so it's a commercial designated land use designation or land use classification. So which zones implement that? And if you go over from commercial, you'll see GC1, GC2, all the way to GC10. So that's the way it works. So you think about it's designated commercial. The next thing is to figure out, well, which of these is the most appropriate to implement that, right? And so that works with all of the land use classification. So a couple things about the land use plan map that exists in Girdwood today is some of these things are not quite clear, right? Like commercial is pretty clear, but commercial recreation isn't that clear. It isn't clear whether that could be implemented by any of the GC1 through GC10 or only the GCR 1s through GC3. And that creates some uncertainty. So if somebody came to us and they said, hey, I have some land and it's designated in the plan map as commercial recreation, we would say, okay, we'll look and see which zones implement that. And if it's not clear, then you run into this issue where somebody says, well, I think it counts as commercial. Somebody said, well, I think it's really more recreation, but the land use designation says commercial recreation. And so it kind of creates this uncertainty, which would be ideal to avoid. But again, what we're thinking about today is still just the left column here and thinking about what are the broad general categories. And down the line, we'll figure out, well, okay, what would be the zoning types, either existing or new or hybrid or changed or something that would implement those. So keep just thinking about that highest level of what are the general types of activities. Again, we're looking at you have a big piece of property. You're thinking about, where do I want to put my garden? You're not thinking about what's going in the garden, what kind of soil to use. You're thinking, where's the best sunlight in this yard to place the garden area or the sitting area? You're not thinking about the stones or the pavers or anything like that. So thinking about generalized activities, high level stuff at the whole community level. Next, please, Holly. So what will the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan actually do? Again, through this process, it's starting to think about creating the land use map designations or classifications, writing that text and figuring out, okay, what are the general activities we want? And what does that mean? What's the definition of that? And then later down the road, you'll work on, well, what are the zoning districts that kind of implement that and implement that vision? So that if we say we want commercial that allows a wide mix of stuff, then you have to put zoning that fits into that also allows a wide mix of stuff, right? So it's always implementing the plan. So that kind of comes afterwards. I know it's tempting to think about, well, what about, what if, are we going to do lot coverage or what's allowed there? I would say if you find yourself going that direction, just remember, we're thinking the highest level. We don't want the specifics just yet, just the generalized activities. Next, please, Holly. Oh yeah, so we are currently at this phase, and if you press right again, Holly, I think the animation will come up. Then this phase will come later, and then after that, Holly, if you go to the next one, then the final phase is really kind of getting that passed and doing that. Sometimes it works best if once you've got your land use designations, you start thinking about the zoning, you can bring those things forward together. We did that with downtown, and it really helped in making sure there weren't discrepancies or times when the zoning didn't align with the plan or the plan didn't align with zoning. But again, that's probably something we'll talk about when we're meeting in person. Right now, we're really just looking at land use map designations and land use categories. So next, Holly, please. Cool.
Okay. So I think I think before I get into the vision, goals, and policies, I want to ask if there's any questions, because we just kind of went over a lot of the nuts and bolts of it. So why don't we stop for questions or discussion before we go any further? Go ahead, Jerry.
So if you look at those categories, is it possible to make new categories? And what I'm thinking of is there's a category for single family and there's a category for multifamily. For multifamily, you're thinking about, I would guess, duplexes and above, and single family is single family. In the land use that we have now, or in the future, we may want areas that have both single family and multifamily development. So it might be good to have another designation that has both. And that's just a comment.
Yeah, I'm going to have Daniel talk about this a little bit more, but the answer is yes, you can absolutely revise this list. Daniel, this might be a good time to talk about just briefly how maybe a simplified map makes things more efficient, but yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, that is a great point. The answer is yeah. You could say residential, and it could say any types of residential and even a limited type of commercial. You could call it daily use commercial or something like that. And so that's the thing with the land use map. The more kind of complex you make it with the more and more types of designations, the harder it is to implement, because then you have to match, you either have to create more zones or have to fit more zones into the designations. And again, plans, nobody is holding a gun to your head saying you have to do this. Everybody tries to make it work, but it's a lot easier if you just think broadly and say, well, this is an area where kind of there's some commercial activity and some residential activity. The whole area could be categorized as a sort of mixed use, right? Or something like that. Just thinking about, because that's what happens. That's the way it's always been. So these are what they thought were the best categories in 1995. Things have changed, practices have changed. And by all means, you can condense these zones or change these zones and define them, because you kind of think of the zone and then writing the text is thinking about, all right, well, what do we want this to look like in the future? And that's where you can say, this is open to all sorts of family living, for example. And then that would allow a wider flexibility of implementing zones in the future, which in turn would give people a little more flexibility in trying, projects or that sort of thing. So I don't know if Christine, you wanted to weigh in or Holly, but that's kind of my piece.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. This is the perfect opportunity to have that discussion while we're talking about the land use plan map and then the different zoning, how we call them zoning districts, to implement the land use plan map. You guys are in a great position to do that. And when we see you on May 10th, we may have a couple of different proposals for you that are related to the goals and vision and goals that Holly's going to go over again here in a minute. One quick thing, Holly, I just wanted to answer Brian's question, and I did put it in the chat. I looked at their Chapter 9 code, and master planning is required for certain zoning districts. And I believe Alyeska is in a couple of those where a master plan is required. So that Title 21, Chapter 9, if you guys have a chance, more homework before the May meeting, just take a look at your zoning code. And you can find that on our website at muni.org, planning department, and then just go over and Title 21 is right there.
I thought I was in charge of homework. I'm kidding.
Sorry.
I'm just giving you a hard time. You're fine.
That's okay.
Okay. Jerry, go ahead.
I have one other quick question, and that is the 1995 plan, what we have existing does not match that. Would it be helpful to get the 1995 plan map kind of updated by what is existing? And I'll give an example, like the brewery is a commercial property up along the highway, and it's it's in a place that says it's residential. There's multifamily that says it's in single family. I'm just thinking
So
that would be helpful.
some of those specific cases, I don't know, Daniel, did you do any research on that? I don't want to get into the details of that too much. Somebody could have gone through a land use plan map change or a zoning change in order to implement that process, which is something that can happen. Do you know if that happened, Daniel?
I don't know the specifics, but I could say, I mean, that makes sense, right? Things change over time. So if in 1995 they thought, no, this is really needs to be a residential area, but in the 2000s things changed and they said, no, this makes sense to have a brewery. It makes sense to say, okay, in the future we probably expect maybe more similar stuff like that's here with the brewery. So it's perfectly okay to change the land use plan map. It's really just thinking about what might it look like in the future. We don't have to be stuck by what people thought in 1995. It's always changing. So.
Okay, it's either Barb or Paul. Go ahead.
This is Barb. Thank you. I was just had a question on, again, I don't know that much about land use stuff, but there's the 3 different reserve categories. And it just seems to me like that's a weird designation. Like you couldn't really make up your mind whether that was really resort or not. And I'm just wondering if that's typical of a land use map or if this was just something where nobody could make up their minds. And so they called it reserve. It seems to me like something I would like to get rid of that designation when we look at our various categories, but I'd love to hear why they're called reserve. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that it's typical for, well, especially now in 2023, right? I think it's typical for these land use classifications to be way more simple than maybe the dozen that you have. Let's see, I know these are small for you all, but resort, recreation, and development reserve. And Barb, I'm going to give you links to all these resources so that you can prepare for this for next time. So resort reserve says areas that are suitable for base facilities and services that have a primary relationship to a major commercial recreation resource, but are not anticipated to be developed during the near or immediate time frame. So keep in mind, remember what was happening at this time in 1995? I think you were all discussing the potential of a golf course in the community, right? So like, I'm wondering if some of these are like a reaction to that. Recreation reserve, the classification is for an area that is suitable for multi-purpose recreational use, but which is not anticipated to have major recreational facilities development. Development reserve, this classification is for areas that are generally suitable for development, but whose location and absence of public facilities and lack of projected. Okay, so the answer is, Barb, it's really complicated. It doesn't need to be that complicated. And you don't have to feel bad about simplifying this or changing it based on what 2023 looks like. Do you agree, Daniel?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is. It's kind of like, do you really need those categories? Maybe, I don't know. But to me, it kind of seems like a reserve is a reserve. And if you have an idea of a few zones that implement that, great. But yeah, from my perspective, the more land use, types of designations you have, it gets harder to use, right? And it becomes this very specific type, and then it reduces the flexibility and it reduces the ability to sort of accommodate just the realities of how things change. Like somebody mentioned back in the day where the brewery was, nobody thought that would be a good site, but I'm sure now people are thinking, yeah, it makes sense that it's the site there, right? So it's sort of being like forgiving of yourself a little bit. So yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. Questions? Any more questions or discussion you want to have before I start moving? And we have plenty of time, so. Okay. Okay. So I think that in 2 weeks, on May 10th, it's going to be, I mean, it should be fun for you all to get together and start thinking about a future land use map. And I don't know how many people have actually read this document that I have on the screen right now. You can see what it says draft on it, right? You can all see that? Okay. So I want to go through this a little bit because I want you to remember that this is the vision that you're working toward. So when you start thinking about a future land use plan map with these broad categories of housing, commercial, industrial, whatever it is, whatever you decide on that list, that these are the things you're going to start working on implementing. And I'm going to do a little bit of reading here, but, and I'm not going to read all of it, but I just want everybody to realize that the importance of this document, because this is the vision and goals and policies. It's a vision, goals, and policy document. I'm going to go through broadly the vision and the goals here. Okay. Girdwood, so overarching plan goals. From the 20,000 foot level with the Girdwood comprehensive plan. And this is what we took from the public meetings we had already, the community survey, and all the Imagine Girdwood committee meetings and workshops over the past few years. So what we know, Girdwood values its small town atmosphere. Girdwood envisions a community with equitable and affordable access to services, facilities, and housing that maintain and enhance the quality of community life. Girdwood is a community that is active outdoors. Girdwood's natural environment is the basis or foundation for your identity and economy. Okay, Girdwood residents. So as you want to be very active as you make decisions about land use. So those are the overarching goals. As we started drilling deeper into what those were, we realized that they centered around 4 different topic areas, which were economic development, housing, recreation and natural space, and transportation. Okay, so these are different focus areas than they were 25 years ago, but again, that's okay because things change, right? So for those of you for which this is new for, I'm going to read these because I think they're powerful, and these are the things I want you to be thinking about for 2 weeks. Okay, economic development. The vision was increase economic opportunities for people to live, work, and play in Girdwood. Girdwood's environment drives its economy. Development must be sustainable and sensitive to the current and changing environment. Girdwood aspires to be a low environmental impact community. Your goals for that were economic diversification and sustainability. Economic development in Girdwood is compatible with the natural environment. Development is sensitive to and enhances the natural environment. Girdwood is a climate resilient community. Girdwood has a broad range of services within the community. Girdwood decreases its carbon footprint. Girdwood maintains and enhances our community character and sense of place. Okay, so me just reading those now, there's certain goals on that list, and this is why I'm taking you through it. There's certain goals on this list that when you get to the implementation actions in your plan, it might not have a land use like a land use implication, right? It might be something more of like how your government is organized, which kind of communities are there, or which kind of committees function. So it doesn't always have to have a land use implementation action. So you can see here that Girdwood is a climate resilient community. There might be land use actions that you take and that you might be thinking about, like where things are spaced in your community. Do you have to travel a really far way to get from the post office to your house? You might be thinking about things like that. Girdwood decreases its carbon footprint. So that's why I'm going through these in detail, so that as you start thinking about land use, you're kind of thinking about it from that sort of land use perspective. Now let's get into housing. Housing is a good one here, and I think the committee spent a long time thinking about this. Vision. The range of housing options in Girdwood allows residents the opportunity to live and work in Girdwood. The cost of housing in Girdwood balances employment and income distribution. Goal, maximize the use of existing housing inventory to meet Girdwood housing needs. Encourage a broad range of new housing development that is consistent with Girdwood's community character, natural character, and Girdwood's housing vision, needs, and cost challenges. Develop additional organizational capacity for housing development in Girdwood. Girdwood collects and analyzes housing data to better support community planning and development. Okay, so those are your housing goals. You should review those again before the land use plan workshop. Okay, recreation and natural space. Recreation and natural spaces are a cornerstone of life in Girdwood. Local parkland, natural spaces, trails, commercially developed recreation, indoor facilities are all critical elements of a robust community recreation system. Our driveways are our trailheads, and our backyards are gateways to natural spaces. Okay, so when you're thinking about the land use plan map, again, I know I keep saying it, but we're drilling it home. These are the goals that you're working to implement. The Girdwood recreation system is balanced. There are a range of year-round experiences for community-supported activities. Girdwood has indoor and covered recreation facilities. Girdwood has a formal, established, maintained, and protected system of trails and natural spaces. Girdwood's trails and natural spaces are integrated into the community. Okay, and then transportation. All modes of transportation, including human-powered, are considered equally, and Girdwood is a walkable community. Girdwood has a connected system of trails and walkways. A car is not required to live here. Support a year-round, regular, and reliable transit between Girdwood and Anchorage. Parking in Girdwood complements our community and does not encourage unnecessary driving. Ensure that Girdwood's transportation infrastructure is resilient if emergency evacuation is necessary. Maintain the Girdwood Airport as a valuable community asset. Encourage the integration of the Alaska Railroad Girdwood Depot into the local transportation network. Okay, thank you for bearing with me on that. Those are important because those are the framework of how you're going to get to your implementation actions for this plan. Okay. All right. Let me just get back to any questions about those before I move on? Or any discussion you want to have about those? Okay. So what happens next? This is us today. Oops. This is us today at the Land Use Plan Map Workshop 1. What is it? What is land use? Okay. So the homework. These are the things that are going to help you be most productive in 2 weeks. You should review the land use plan map from 1995, and we've made it a little bit easier for you. Can you put that link in the chat again, Daniel, so that people who've just logged on can get to it?
Yeah.
The planning department has digitized the map so that it's easier for you here, and I'll just open it. It's great. Is you can really click around and see what's going on. So, and remember, the legend is over here. This is Girdwood land use in 1995. And it has all your categories here, and you can zoom in and you can click around and see what everything is designated. Okay, so we've made it a little bit easier for you to be able to find the resource rather than having to look at that, the smaller map. Okay, so, and the intent is for it, like we keep saying, you can change this, right? That's the point of a future land use plan map. You can change it, but it's helpful to know where you came from in order to figure out where you're going. So it's helpful to know how things are, or how things were designated in 1995. Okay. Second thing, I know I just read it, but I think it's important for everyone to review that vision, goals, and policy document. Because again, those are the things that you're trying to implement. And I'm gonna put that link. This is on the website. This is also, that's where you can get to it here. This is your Imagine Girdwood website. And you can get to that here, the vision, goals, and policy document. This is right on the homepage. You can get to it here. We also have a link to that land use plan map here. Okay. So you can get to all these resources on your homepage.
And the land use category definitions, that that little underlined here is a link.
Yep. That's your third thing, is review the land use category designation definitions. So you can, again, see where you were, so you can decide how you want to move forward. Okay. Those are here. And it's a little bit of an easier format to read. I pulled it out of the old plan just so that you had it. This is text that is directly from the 1995 plan. Okay. All right. So what you're doing is you're reviewing two things from the past: the land use classifications, the land use plan map from 1995. Two things from the past and one thing from the future, which for the future, not from the future, for the future, is your vision, goals, and policy document. And your homework is to review those things and start thinking about how you're going to bridge that gap. How are we going to get from the past to the future? And what does that look like from a land use plan map perspective? Okay. So spoiler alert, I imagine there's going to be a little bit of group work in 2 weeks where you're going to actually work on developing as a small group some land use plan maps. And like my goal is to see how many people are thinking about what land use could look like in the future in your community based on your vision, goals, and policies.
Holly, there was a question in the chat. I don't want to interrupt you, but
no, I'm done. Go ahead. What was it?
The question, and unfortunately I wish I'd caught it earlier, was about what land use zoning would a charter school have?
Well, it depends on if it's an ASD school, it would likely be public lands and institutions. But
I could weigh in on that too.
Yeah, go for it, please.
I think it's more about where do you want to allow schools rather than thinking where should this use fit. You could say this is a residential area, this is a mixed use area, and you could say schools can fit in that. In other countries, the definitions, I think in Germany, for example, when they say this is a residential zone, for what they consider residential, they consider anything like a grocery store or a little like a bakery. They just consider that part of residential life. So in your designations, your classifications, you could say, we think that a school is kind of part of residential life. It could be in that. So I wouldn't, in terms of uses, you can think of that down the line and think, well, what if we did allow schools in residential areas, so kids could walk there? So it's really, you can define these classifications, these designations. So whether the use fits or not, it's more about, well, does that fit in with the general category of what you're thinking for here? And maybe it doesn't, but you think, that is a great place for the school. So maybe it should have a different designation. Maybe it really should be more of a civic area than an industrial area or something like that. So it's pretty flexible, and allow yourself to sort of be creative and don't get too pinned down on anything as you're thinking about it, is my recommendation.
Yeah, to follow up with that, in the table of allowed uses right now, I'm going to assume that that is could be a private school. It's allowed in a couple of different zones in residential. It's allowed in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 commercial zones. Not in your industrial. But a private school is allowed in your resort zoning district. So that's completely different than the blue public lands institution land use map designation.
So, yeah, I mean,
Where you see that's where the kind of the little bit of you figure out what's the connector or what's disconnected right now. That's kind of what you guys are really going to be looking at is, okay, here are the goals and the visions. But then we got this land use plan map, but then we have this table of allowed uses within the zoning. And is the land use plan map and the zoning really giving us what we want to have? So if you want to be able to have a private school in any residential district or any commercial district, then you're going to actually need to change your chapter 9 a little bit. And that's a little bit different than this project and would be after this. So, but that's the kind of things that you guys are going to be looking at.
Yeah. So Crystal, the goal is going to be for us to stay at the land use plan map designation level. We're not going to get into a use table, not yet. That's a pretty complicated exercise. The goal is going to be to develop the land use plan map designations and definitions that allow that future process to happen. So like, for example, I was reading these land use category definitions and I don't love them from 1995. I think this project can do a better job at defining these land use categories. So, okay. Brian asked,
Oh, you got it. Okay.
are the goals and visions a draft or are they policy? Yeah, they're not policy yet. Brian, what the committee did is they spent about a year, maybe more, developing them. And then they voted to like approve a draft to carry forward. Because at some point you have to like stop working on those things, right? And start working on the rest of the plan, what we're doing now. So they're still in a draft form. It's just, we're not gonna change them much until the plan starts moving through the approval process. I mean, I already see some things that have changed in community conversations from them. So I probably know what you're getting at there, but yeah, they're not final. They'll end up in the draft plan.
The possibility makes no sense if we're not.
Brianna, you're unmuted. Did you want to say something?
I got her. I muted her unless she wants to say something. Okay.
Holly, I have a question.
Go ahead.
You saying that the land use category definitions could be better, like less of them and more specific, or how could they be?
I just think they could provide a little bit better direction. You know,
Okay.
that's what I think. Like for example, reading them all, they're like, this classification is for areas substantially developed for single family residential purposes. Well, yeah, that's what the title says, and are expected to remain so for the duration of the plan. Well, yeah, obviously, I don't know. Like, I think we could define them in a way that kind of like talks about the character of that category instead of just reiterating the title of it. I don't know. That's just my own criticism. So.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Looks
Holly,
like
is your May 10 meeting going to be a hybrid so that
Here's what I'm going to say. We can let you zoom in, but you're going to be woefully disappointed. The intent really is for people in the room to be workshopping together. If there is, I don't know, who controls all the tech in that room? Kyle and Brett?
yeah.
Is it easy to set up? Would they do it for us? Do you think?
They won't, I don't think they want someone to babysit the very expensive audio visual equipment. So
Yeah.
they would have to be there, and I don't know about, yeah, we could ask. I feel like we've asked and they've said no, so.
Okay. We don't know
We
yet.
we can bring our owl. That would help out a little bit. At least, you know, if Brian wanted to call in, then or Teams in or something like that, he could be on the owl and see and watch, you know, what's happening.
Could somebody like myself, maybe even, I don't know, be in a breakout room to help guide a breakout discussion virtually? Would that be an option?
Maybe. I mean, I have no doubt that any group of Girdwood residents could get together in a Zoom room and do the activity.
Annotate a virtual map and we record it.
Maybe, yeah.
Options.
But the real, I think everyone's gonna have the most fun. So like if you're actually out of town or not feeling well or something, that's different. But if you're in town and you can participate, I think you're gonna get the most out of it if you attend in person. So stay tuned for options.
And you can always, Brian, you can always comment, like you can send us to Holly, well, I don't want to solicit that, Holly, you'll take comments, but the Girdwood, Imagine Girdwood email as well. You can always submit a comment. We're not super on it with checking that email, honestly, but now that I've said that, I'm gonna do better. So I have another question. First of all, thank you for reading the vision goals parts that you did read. It makes me think of all those, all the time that we spent working on those, and it's just a good reminder of what we're working toward, and all that time that went into it. So I was wondering, based on our last meeting, we had a very good discussion about snow storage. And then I was thinking about the different layers as Daniel was talking about land use and then zoning. So it's kind of like the private school, right? We could make residential area require snow storage to be every so much space that needs plowing has so much snow storage, right? Is that how I understand it? So we would just say this is residential, and then we would deal with snow storage in the zoning.
Yeah, exactly. Unless, of course, you were doing maybe an industrial snow storage, right? That might be something where it's the larger type of activity that's there. But in terms of the specific stuff that's kind of accessory to the main activities, that's something you would deal with when zoning. You say on every site you have to have X amount. That would just be a zoning issue. So
yeah, I mean, it's and I think about it from, we're Alaskans, we have houses, we have to remove snow. It's like, it's not, but you don't want to live next to the tallest snow dump on the planet. Like that's an incompatible use, right? That is not. So anyway, you want to be thinking about that larger impact, health and human safety, quality of life. What uses are compatible next to each other? What uses are not compatible next to each other?
Well, it's like currently, right? Sure, I deal with my own snow in my driveway, but the city plowing, they have nowhere to put their snow. So they end up piling it in our yards, which is fine. That's how it goes. But, you know, designated snow storage might be a good thing too. Compatible uses, awesome.
What else? Do you feel happy about the prep work for 2 weeks from now, or do you feel a little cranky about it? How does everybody feel about it? Okay. I'm asking about your feelings during a land use plan map workshop. Is that right? Is that right? Is that compatible?
It's Girdwood. We talk about our emotions here. It's good.
Okay. All right. Any final words of wisdom from you, Daniel? Are you?
No, without getting too much into it. I mean, no, we had talked about maybe having a sort of blank slate and having people look at that so you can think about if you were planning sort of a fictional city, how would you do it? But that's probably more homework, but maybe Holly, we can talk about that. Send it out if somebody wants extra credit or something, but.
Okay, well, that's all we had for the evening. So,
Holly, I just want to say one quick thing.
Sorry.
Thanks so much for the meeting. Thanks everybody for attending. I think we covered a lot tonight, and it's probably a little bit dry and not very exciting for a Wednesday night. But I think that you guys, when you dive back into your report and then you take a look at what we're talking about, the land use plan map in relation to zoning, with Holly sending out the PowerPoint, I think that it'll come together for you and make sense. And then you all can go, oh, yeah, okay. Well, I know some places that aren't working very well that, we maybe don't want to do that again. So, and then things that you see in the community that are wonderful, and you want that to be in a bunch of different places. So, those are the good things to think about when you're looking at the hard work that you've done, because you've done a lot. And I really, want to commend you guys for all the work that you have done. It's going to be helpful in the long run to get your plan done. And I'll be quiet.
Thank you. I also, Holly, Daniel, he reminded me that we were talking about, y'all were talking about doing a tabletop kind of exercise with a imaginary city. Since we have a little bit of time, would you mind talking what that might look like? I don't know, maybe we shouldn't dive into it.
I could try if Holly, if it's okay with you, I could do 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, I'll just share my screen quickly here. Oh boy, I have a lot of tabs open. Okay. Let's see. Okay. All right, can everybody see this place?
Yes.
Okay, if I open the snip, does that show up here, or can you only see Google Map? Can you see the snipping tool?
No, but you can use you can annotate probably.
Let me I'm gonna try a different approach. I'm gonna share screen and go to a specific window. Okay. How about now? Can you guys see if I make a little red squiggle, can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So we were kind of talking about take some random little settlement somewhere in a place that kind of looks like Girdwood, and just sort of unchain your mind and think about, okay, what should this look like in the future? So say this is our town, it's some little place in Switzerland or something, and we're thinking about, we're the community, we think, well, what's it going to look like 20, 30, 40 years from now? And what should be where? And we know there are going to be more people, so we want to accommodate them. So the first thing we want to do is like, well, let's say this is our main kind of commercial area. So in that area, maybe we want to have, kind of mixed use. We want commercial, we want residential, we want a lot of flexibility. So we designated that as our sort of mixed use area. And then we have this nice lake here, and say they also have a resort. And so we could say, okay, maybe this will be our resort in the future, right? And we designate this as our resort area. And then maybe you say, right now this is more of a low density area, but we know we're going to change. So we say, you know what? We know there's going to be growth. We know it's got to go somewhere. This is farm. So we're going to say this is the future kind of lower density area, but maybe up to a certain amount of units. So it's sort of like LD. And so this is kind of what we were thinking about, is looking at a sort of specific thing and just thinking in terms of what's there. We have to look at, there's a lake here, there's a bunch of farms here. This is where all this stuff is right now. We expect more stuff to happen there, more stuff to come here. We could also say, well, we know this is certainly going to stay a transportation corridor. So we could just say, in this area, we don't really want to encourage that much residential because of noise, and people are going to have issues with it. So it's always going to be designated as a kind of commercial, or a transportation corridor. We could call that T, right? So this is sort of what we're thinking, something like this. And looking closely, then somebody says, well, we want to have a different type of economy maybe in the future. So, okay, so let's call this, maybe this could be, there's been some industrial growth there, and let's just designate this as sort of an industrial mixed use, right? Or something like that in the future. So I've just, really been doing this off the cuff, but so far I've been coming up with a few potential land use designations and thinking about how this will look in the future. And the plan is acknowledging that things are going to change. They might change, right? And actually, I since I'm here, I'd better say, and we decided this is going to be our heritage farm district, because that's where we have all our famous, Swiss dairy cows. So we'll call it heritage farm or something. So here I've just sort of off the cuff thinking about what would make the most sense in terms of where the lake is, where the hills are, maybe where the roads are, where the sunlight is, where the existing stuff is. Another thing to look at is infrastructure, for example. It makes a lot of sense to put more stuff where there's existing infrastructure. Maybe it's easier to build water pipes out here. So that's why they decided, okay, right now this is farms, but in the future we have to accommodate, and it's probably going to be more housing, and that's okay. This is the resort. They have plans to expand, and so they're going to go in here. And again, this is just thinking of the future, right? It doesn't preclude any of these uses. It doesn't make any of this illegal. It just means as things change and people move away or redevelop, they might redevelop into a different direction or not, right? And some of these, it would be the exact same type of pattern that's been going on. So we were thinking about something like that. I mean, Amanda, what are your thoughts? Holly, what are your thoughts? Anybody else? That's kind of where I was thinking potentially.
I mean, you're obviously going to do this activity for Girdwood. The thing that is both really good and also really challenging is the thing that's good is that your community. Obviously, you're the experts. Where Daniel is drawing farms where I'm not sure that community wanted farms, right? And that's not, he was just giving an example, but my point is that it's good that you're the experts for your own community. I also think it's a bad thing. You're the experts for your own community. You have baggage in your community. And why I'm saying that is because I don't want that to hinder you as you think strategically about the future. Like, try to get yourself in a fresh mindset so that you can think about your community in the future as your own, as a community expert. I guess what I'm saying, just don't let that hinder your future thinking. We're going to have tools for you to use. So we're not going to expect you to because, Daniel's a planner. He has a degree. We're going to make it accessible for you. So I don't want it to feel really difficult for anybody. You're going to have, just don't be afraid of that. We're going to have all the tools and resources that you'll need in order to be able to complete an exercise successfully. Arts and crafts.
Yay! Hopefully there's glitter. I was wondering, my understanding is that in 2 weeks, what we're going to have are maybe a couple of options with different zoning colorings already on maps, or are we doing more of the Daniel, what he just did with like a blank Girdwood map and then we color in?
I don't know yet. We haven't figured that out yet.
Multiple stations with different options, maybe.
I mean, I actually kind of think that, I think it's going to be a combination of both things. But like I said, I want you all to have the flexibility to like think about it creatively and strategically for yourselves for the future. But I also want, because the planning department has done this all over. I mean, they're the experts, right? So I also want the planning department to participate in a way that is actually achievable too, to show an example of something achievable too. I mean, I'm not saying that what you all come up with isn't going to be achievable. I just, you know what I mean?
Like maybe opaque, this could be this kind of zoning or whatever. Like this will support development. That might be a good way to do it. Like this area is the flood zone. Please don't try to put things there. Like the squirrel cages.
Oh yeah. That's good. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, we might be there to say, well, this area has slopes, or this area has, water pipes, or this area AWU said is not, you can't service it. So you might say, oh, we want more housing there. It's like the soils are sand basically, or something like that. So we're, it's not that we're the experts that have all the knowledge. I think it's just maybe we spend more time looking at more of the, kind of minutiae. And so we can say, well, just based on what we've seen, that maybe could be something different, or just to be aware of some of the sort of pitfalls or maybe benefits of one thing or another, but just sort of be in the background to provide extra information.
So Shannon, you just asked a question about suitability, basically. And we've already completed that existing conditions analysis that has a land use suitability analysis within it. So we'll talk about having those maps available so you can see land use suitability for the whole valley and the criteria that we use to analyze it. It's actually, let's see, I added the assembly. Anyway, I will get the most recent version of the document uploaded on the website. And that will be there soon.
Holly, HLB just did a report of their own.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it was due on the 20th, and it's on all their property throughout Anchorage, not just the Girdwood area.
I mean, the thing about the analysis that we did is it just looks at all the parcels and what they're zoned and what their development suitability is based on a series of criteria.
Yeah, I wanted to say real quick to let you all know that Daniel and Holly and I and Shanna just came off of about a year-long effort updating the downtown plan. And when we updated the downtown plan, we did a lot of what you all are doing. But we also looked at, again, what's working, what isn't working. And we're able to make a lot of recommendations that we could do to kind of fix stuff to get what we heard people wanted for downtown. And so, this is your time, like I said in the chat, to be able to take what you've, created as a foundation and fix some stuff that you think needs to be fixed. And it's okay to be brave and, just do stuff like that. And we're here to help you do that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate the I don't know, like encouragement to, I love that. Be brave. I also, we're adding so much to the chat, but hopefully it's good resources. So HLB just came out with their draft 5-year plan. So since we're talking about HLB, I figured, and we have some people here, I put that in the chat. You can make comments right now through June 9th. But then also Holly put the existing condition report in the chat. Thank you.
One last thing that we have done too at the Muni is we took a look at any historical or cultural resource that you all had in the Girdwood area. And there's 2 copies of that report in the library. And so you all might want to take a look at that too. It talks a lot about the architecture and stuff that Girdwood has that's so special. And an idea for a historic district if you all think you want to support that through this planning effort. And then just, it gives a lot of background information about Girdwood that, you know, maybe folks didn't know about too. So those should be in the library. There should be 2 of those. And that report was done by True North Sustainable Development Solutions.
Well, I think I'm out of stuff. We
I
good?
think Joel has the HLB land report for Girdwood. If you wanted to just put that in the chat, that would be, I think, great for people to be able to look at. But yeah, I don't have anything else either. Thank you. Thank you so much, you guys, for putting that on, and I think it was really valuable.
Thanks for having us. If anyone has any questions, by all means, I'll put my email on the chat if I'm about to answer them.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, you guys.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.